Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to tonight's City Council meeting and Committee of the Whole meeting. Tonight's City Council meeting is called to order. I kindly ask our City Clerk to please take the roll call.
Bruno.
Here.
Burkhardt is out. Ruby.
Here.
Caven is out. Kilberg.
Here.
Kasserag.
Here.
Maladra.
Here.
Marks.
Here.
Mayor.
Here.
Swanson.
Here. We begin our City Council meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance, and tonight I would like to ask, let's see, how about John Frericks from Deutschler Associates lead us in the pledge? What do you think, John?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. Let me begin by expressing my gratitude to the City Council and, of course, to our friends at Deutschler Associates for being so flexible last week when we canceled the meeting at the last moment because of the storms and, of course, sirens going off. At that meeting, as all of the council members know, we were to begin that meeting with a moment of silence to honor our former colleague, John Anderson, who passed away last week. For those of you who are not aware, John Anderson served on this City Council from 1989 to 1993. He then served extensively on the Police and Fire Commission Board of Trustees. And of course, as all of you tennis fans know, he was the head tennis coach at Geneva High School, and I believe won 4 or 6 Little 7 conference championships as head coach. He passed away at the tender age of 93, peacefully. We had the pleasure of visiting with his family. And there's something about John that it is humorous, so I want you to get a kick out of this. John was a huge Iowa fan. And unbeknownst to me, he had a picture of my son-in-law in his apartment, who graduated from Iowa on the basketball squad. And he was obviously very proud of having known Aaron and all that good stuff. But nevertheless, John was a good guy, a very gentle person, a wonderful family. And I know that Geneva mourns his loss. So if I may ask for your indulgence while we just bow our head for a moment to send to John's family our thoughts and our prayers. Thank you very much. And that's Anderson with an O, because he would tell you if you did that incorrectly, you'd be in trouble. Got that, Mr. Clerk? It's an O with Anderson.
Sweet.
Yeah, he's a Swede, absolutely, man. Well, folks, let's see. We have all sorts of fun stuff tonight. Public hearing, special items, and presentations. Item 3A, introduce street maintenance worker Sean Corwin, electric manager Jose Ruiz, and business operations specialist Jennifer Shelley. Okay, we're going to shoot it off here with Sean. Sean, where are you, man? You're the one I offered coffee to, and you said no. Now, you've got a fascinating background, man.
Okay.
Fascinating background. Yorkville High School graduate.
Yep.
Do you care if I share the year?
No, not at all.
To be determined, it says. 2008.
Yep.
How's that going for you, man? Maladra suddenly depressed. Aurora University, majored in education, and you played football.
Yep.
At Aurora. What position did you play?
Safety.
Safety. So what, 2009 through 12?
Yeah, 13.
13?
Yep.
What was the record during that time span?
About 500.
500?
Yeah.
You guys have a turf field?
Yep.
You do?
Very nice field.
Yeah, it is a nice field, isn't it?
Yep.
Why safety? Is that what you played all your life?
Yeah, I've always liked. Well, I'm a wrestler, so I like hitting people. And
Yeah, I noticed that too, man.
yeah, it's just a fun. It's an intellectual position. I just enjoy playing it.
You know, I played safety my freshman year in high school football, and the guy from St. Charles literally ran around me. That was the last time I ever got on the field.
Yeah.
Probably because of the intellectual level of it.
Yep.
So, your father's construction company, Corwin Construction, where you worked during summers from 8th grade
Yeah. Usually, it just starts off as just scrapping the job site.
through college.
Yeah.
Really?
Yep.
A middle school teacher in Yorkville.
Mm-hmm.
How was that?
It's fun. I like middle school kids.
Yeah?
Yeah. They're interesting age.
I bet they
They're
are.
old enough to be competent, but still young enough to not have the attitude of the high schoolers. So,
Is that right?
yeah.
So did you teach 6th through 8th or a particular grade level?
In Yorkville, it's only 7th and 8th grade at the middle
is?
school.
Okay.
But yeah, all 7th and 8th graders.
Now, I know the high school is the Foxes. What's the middle school's nickname?
Same thing.
Oh, it is?
Yep.
Cool. Not Little Foxes? Or
No.
no? Wrestling and football coach for 5 years. Who's your favorite wrestler?
Well, the Olympics were just on, and we had 2 gold medalists.
Yeah.
David Taylor was at Penn State, and Gable Stevenson's out of Minnesota. So,
Remember the name Dan Gable?
absolutely,
Yeah, isn't that wild?
Iowa legend.
Yeah, very good. Dean, you knew that, of course. And does he really? So do you prefer Greco-Roman or freestyle?
I actually prefer folk style, but
Folk style.
internationally I
both,
like
sorry.
freestyle. Internationally, I like freestyle, but at the high school level and middle school, it's all folk style. But the U.S. is the only country that actually has that. So,
Well, that's cool, man. And what weight class did you wrestle?
152 and 160,
So you remember those days fondly of having to, quote, make weight?
absolutely.
And those were, how do I say this delicately? You did whatever it took, didn't you?
Within reason, we were healthy about it. We have a lot of experience in that area, so
Okay.
a lot of it's dieting before the season to make weight healthy.
What did you and didn't you eat?
I mean, a lot of chicken. It just comes down to calories in versus calories out, really.
Right.
So, yeah.
Wow. You worked for DuPage County,
Yep.
for the Department of Transportation for 2.5 years.
Yep.
I want to talk to you about an intersection over at, what was that experience like?
It was fun.
In the field?
Yeah. Yep. There's about 55 employees in that division.
Wow.
So they have it broken into several different groups. You have your asphalt crews and your concrete,
Yeah.
your mowers. I was on the grade all crew, and I really liked my crew leader. He taught me a lot.
Right.
Thought that was a valuable 2 years.
That's pretty cool, man. And now you're here in
Yep.
beautiful Geneva.
Yep.
And what made you want to head over here?
Like I said, at DuPage, they put you onto a crew, and that's just kind of what you do year round until it's time to plow.
Oh,
Where
okay.
here, I kind of like the versatility of doing something different every day, really, depending on what the job calls for.
So you ready for the plowing?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep.
Have you received all the addresses from the council members with respect to?
No, not yet.
Not yet. So what else should we know about you, Sean? Sure, anything you'd like, or nothing if you prefer.
I think we pretty much touched all the bases.
So what do you do in your downtime when you're not plowing or working or whatever? Don't tell me wrestling.
Well, no, last couple weekends we've been going down to the river to go boating, go wakeboarding.
You guys have a quasi whitewater rafting section in the Fox in Yorkville?
A really small section, yeah. It's
Really small,
probably
yeah.
200 yards, and it's relatively calm. It's man-made.
But it works well though, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
So you're a fisherman too, or?
Not as much.
No?
No, I like different athletics, like sports on the water. Wakeboarding.
Yeah, how do you go from wrestling to fishing? That would not be good. Wow.
I don't know.
So life is good so far for you here?
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Anything we can, we're actually debating tonight to have a 2-day work week. What do you think about that?
I'm in favor.
You're in favor? I'll let Mr. Babica and Nate Landers know.
Okay.
That's great.
Yep.
Well, welcome aboard. We're delighted you're here.
Thank you. I enjoy
Thank
being
you
here.
very much. And feel free to sneak out, man.
Okay, sounds good. Thank
Okay.
you. Yep.
Jose. How are you, man? Manager of Electric Operations. So, how long you been on board, Jose?
2 weeks, 2.5 weeks.
So, how was last week for you?
Well, it was pretty interesting. Even though I had the experience already, I'm coming from the private sector.
Yeah.
I used to work for Florida Power and Light
Oh, sure,
Company
sure.
for 9 years
Wow.
in the GIS and engineering group with distribution.
Wow.
And also, I was working with Entergy, which is the
Sure.
electric utility company in Arkansas
course.
New Orleans, Mississippi, and Texas.
Wow.
So I have an extensive experience in storms events.
Man. Now, do you have a guest with you tonight?
What's that?
Do you have a guest with you this evening?
No.
You just happen to be sitting next to somebody. Okay. Now, that's Jennifer. Forgive me. Check this out. This is fascinating resume. Graduated Venezuela Military Academy, and spent 13 years in the military.
Yep, that's correct. Back home in South America, the way you raise a child is you follow your parents' career path. So my whole family is in the Army.
Is that right?
So my dad is retired. He was in the Army. My uncles and my cousins. So I follow my career, my parents, my dad career path.
Sure.
And then my two brothers follow me too. So my whole family is in the Army. Even my sister is married with a military person too.
Is that right?
So I spent 13 years. I went through different positions, from business, IT, logistic, transportation, and special forces, which was my last assignment for 4 years.
Special forces.
Special forces.
No kidding.
Then I had the opportunity to get a scholarship to come to the States and get my second bachelor degree. So I was able to get a computer science degree and an MBA. So I've been, right after that, I quit and I started working for Florida Power. And I did it for 9 years while they did my residency and my citizenship paperwork. So I spent 9 years with them, 9 good years, until I found this opportunity in New Orleans with Intrusion. So I work with distribution again, engineering and construction. So I did 4 years there, and because I was able to finish my MBA degree, I moved into a different position in the company on the business side.
Wow.
So I was working on the grid modernization industry, where every utility company or every city which has electric facilities wants to be.
Sure.
So it's more like technology, developing new technology to provide better service and real-time service to customers. So you bring new technology to the company and new processes and rule and regulations, so you can offer better services to customer service.
Where did you earn your MBA, Jose?
In New Orleans, University of New Orleans.
No kidding. Wow. Computer science as well?
Computer science in Florida.
Okay. Wow. Well, clearly you've traveled all over the place,
Yes, I've been,
both in the military and, of course, in the private.
that's correct. And even when I was a child, my dad, since he was in the Army, he was, the government kept sending him all around, and we have to follow him because we were the family. So
Sure.
I've been traveling all over the world, even in Venezuela as well. And then when I came here, I started working for Florida Power. I had the opportunity and the time to go out with my wife and kept traveling all over the world. So we've been in many, many, many places.
Unbelievable. Now, it's my understanding that one reason why you were attracted to Geneva is because
Yes.
you have family fairly close by.
Yes.
Family is everything.
I'm sorry?
And family is everything.
That's correct. That's correct. The main reason that me and my wife are here is because she has a cousin who lives in Chicago,
Okay.
and because last year of COVID-19, we all lost family members back
Oh.
home.
So sorry.
So we decided to take the next step and try to stay close to our family members.
Sure.
You know, family is everything. And then my wife and her cousin, they talked for a long time, and they wanted us to move here, so they were helping us, giving us some postings, job postings.
Sure.
And I was able to find this opportunity, which was real challenging, But I think I was ready. I had the background, I had the experience and the knowledge. So I took the opportunity to come and work with the city of Geneva.
That's so cool. Now I got to ask you a personal question. Special forces, you are trained beyond just, I don't mean this in a diminutive way, but beyond just Army personnel. You are trained, specially trained.
Yes.
Have you had to use that training on any staff yet in the electric department?
No, right after I quit, I don't even have a gun at home. So
Okay, well, that's good.
my wife doesn't allow me to do that. She doesn't like guns.
And
she's
does your wife work as well?
She works from home.
Okay, good.
She's working with friends that we met in Florida,
Wow.
and she is running their businesses. And they are a Dominican Republic family
Oh, neat.
who have different businesses. And since my wife is a person who is very smart and she likes numbers and dealing with people, customer service, so she got that job as a general manager.
Nice.
So she runs their business from home, and she's the one who takes care of the payroll, any type of business
Sure.
that they have. So my wife hires, even fire, and she flies to Florida every 2 or 3 weeks,
Wow.
and then she comes home. So sometimes when I was in New Orleans, we had every other Friday off. So she tried to accommodate her schedule with me so I could fly with her and be back by Sunday night. And then that way we both enjoy the weekend.
Exactly. So if I have my facts right, Sean's going to 2 days a week, and you want Fridays off?
Yeah, we had that schedule back home in
Now,
Florida.
is this your first time living in the north
Yes. I've been here before in Chicago.
during the winter?
No. No, we've been visiting her cousin
Sure.
probably 4 times. And we like the weather. I mean, this type of weather right now.
Yeah. Clarify that comment there.
And we like traveling, like I said,
Sure.
and we like Chicago.
Fantastic.
So we enjoy, and we decide to move here.
Well, we're delighted that you also chose Geneva. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Welcome aboard. Look forward to visiting with you out at the Public Works facility. So,
Absolutely. Thank you.
okay.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Welcome.
You all gonna have me.
Jennifer, you and I had the pleasure of meeting last Friday. Jennifer Shelley.
Yes.
Jennifer, I understand, and perhaps I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to anyways. You recognize somebody on the dais from your workout training at H4, is that correct? Would you care to identify that? But they didn't recognize each other
Because of the mask.
in this setting with the masks.
And combed hair.
Combed here. So Jennifer and Stephanie work out at H4. Unbelievable. What time in the morning do you go?
I don't go anymore, but we
Smart.
used to go at 5.
5 in the morning? No wonder you don't go anymore.
All right.
So you're a North Central grad.
Yes.
I almost wore my North Central mask.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. They were handing them out last week at some conference, so it was pretty cool. Beautiful school.
It's changed a lot, I think, since 18 years ago when I graduated, but
Well, I went to Little Augustana College. It's
Oh,
changed a
okay.
lot since
yeah.
37, 8 years ago. So a long time. You two have traveled extensively to China?
No, not extensively now.
Well, it says
that
here,
Jose-
China, Mexico, Aruba.
That's it. He's gone.
No,
way
no,
more.
but this next bullet point is riveting to me because I have never been. Brace yourself. Disney World 40 plus times. Which begs the question, what?
Well, you've never been, so that's why. If you'd been before, you'd know. It's awesome.
40 plus, I mean, seriously.
Well, my
do-
grandparents lived in Florida, so every summer we'd travel to see them, and we'd drive from Illinois to Florida, and they're in South Florida, so we passed Disney on the way there and the way back.
So you just had to stop. Holy moly. This year, if you care to share the date, that'd be exciting. 15-year wedding anniversary.
Yeah, in October it will be.
Nice. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Going skydiving in Hawaii is something you've done.
That we're going to on our honeymoon.
Oh,
or on
this is what you're going to do for your 15 years?
on our anniversary. Yeah.
Oh, who's packing his chute?
Well, he's the one that wants to go, so
Okay.
maybe he's trying to tell me something. I don't know.
Have you ever gone skydiving?
No. So
And you're going to do it in Hawaii?
we'll see if I chicken out when we're there, but
Well, if you've been to Disney World 40 times, what's my God, don't do it over a volcano. That's my only advice. You have 9 nieces and nephews. Are they all scattered about?
no, they're all mostly right here.
Are they?
Yeah. They range in age from a couple of weeks to 19 years old, so.
And I mean, this is week 2 for you.
Mm-hmm.
I met you on day 5. So far, so good?
Mm-hmm.
Does Jose frighten you in any way, shape, or form?
No,
It's a
he's
special-
he's super interesting.
Is it?
That was really.
Did you know all that?
No,
Isn't that something? What do you
that's
think?
amazing.
I know, and Sean too.
I want to switch stories with them.
Yeah.
Mine's
Have you ever
boring.
met Aaron Holton?
Have I met him? Yes.
Yeah. You talk about a background. He's been to Santa's Village 245 times. He's been to-
It's a good place. It's a good place.
And why Geneva, Jennifer?
Why not? I don't know. I live across the street
That's
on
what
the
the
other
clerk said.
side of the river, so
You're close by.
yeah.
Life is good. Mm-hmm. Well, we're delighted that you're with us.
Well, thank you guys for the opportunity. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
And by all means, feel free to sneak out, man. Yeah. Ask Aaron for the City of Batavia credit card and go have a nice dinner.
Thank you.
Thank you. Oh, my Lord. Isn't that cool? Very cool. Item B, folks, consider approval of special event application for Vargo's Dance Thriller on 38, October 28th, 2021. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Bruno. Seconded by Alderwoman Ruby. There is no preface on this matter. All the information, of course, is in your packet. Are there any specific questions for either of the professional staff, in particular, Kathleen Timoshenko? Mike, you're a big dancer. What's your preference on dancing? Don't say the electric slide.
Foxtrot, I'll say.
Seriously? We have a motion by Bruno, a second by Ruby. The voice vote is sufficient. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? The motion passes with 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 absent. Life is good. Item 3C, consider approval of special event application from Penrose Brewing Company for the Oktoberfest event. I need new glasses. September 18, 2021, which is genuine Oktoberfest, because in Germany it's held in September, right? Is there a motion? Motion by Kosarog, seconded by Swanson, I believe. Any questions or comments for Kathleen regarding this? Anyone from Penrose with us? Hey, oh, there you are. Good Lord, man. You guys are doing some cool work over there.
We're working on it.
I know. I love the Instagram photos are pretty neat.
Thanks, yeah, we just laid the patio. This
Yeah. I saw the picture with all the Miller Lite. That was really neat.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that was
Big wall of Miller Lite.
a big wall of Miller Lite for all the 75-year-olds. Yeah. I shouldn't say that, sorry. Any questions or comments? Hearing none? Seeing none? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, please say nay. Congratulations, with 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 absent. You're off and running.
Thank you.
Good luck. Keep posting those cool pictures, too.
We certainly will.
That's awesome, man. Okay. Item 3D, folks, consider approval of special event application for Geneva Chamber of Commerce, Festival of the Vine, September 10 through 12, 2021. Is there a motion? Motion by Alderman Swanson, seconded by Alderman Marks. Any questions or comments from the council? Seeing none? Anticipating none? Sensing none? The voice vote would be sufficient. All in favor, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. Anyone opposed, say nay. The motion passes with 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 absent. Congratulations. Item 3E, folks, consider approval of special event liquor license for Festival of the Vine, September 10 through 12, 2021. Motion by Kosarog, seconded by Mayor. If this is a no vote, it's going to be one wicked Festival of the Vine. Any questions or comments regarding the liquor license request? All in favor of the motion, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, say nay. The motion passes with 8 in the affirmative, 0 negative votes, and 2 absent. Success. Item 4, folks, amendments to the agenda. Are there any amendments this evening? Item 5 is the Omnibus agenda. All items marked with an asterisk are considered to be routine by this council and can be considered and voted upon with one motion. Is there such a motion? Alderman Marks makes that motion.
Second.
Alderman Bruno makes that second. Mr. Clerk, whenever you're ready, sir, please take the roll.
Bruno,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kosarog,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
The omnibus agenda has been approved with 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 absent. Now, according to my little cheat sheet here, we are down 2. Yes, I just gotta find that. Number 10, folks, municipal bills for payment. We kindly ask our city clerk to read the bills in their aggregate for our consideration.
Total bills are $3,532,059.01.
Mayor, I move that we approve and pay the bills as read. The individual items that add up to that amount could be found in tonight's city council packet on the city website.
Welcome back, Alderman Bruno. Whatever he said, folks. Is there a second to that motion to approve the bills as presented, which are also available on the city's website and in the council members' packets?
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Mayor. Any questions or comments regarding the bills? Mr. Clerk, whenever you're available, sir, please take the roll.
Ruby,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kosarog,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Swanson.
Aye.
The bills have been approved.
Sorry.
Oops, excuse me.
And Bruno.
Aye.
My apology.
The bills have been approved with 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 absent. Skipping down to item 12A, recommend resolution number 2021-71, authorizing the use of Rebuild Illinois funds for the Couts Road widening and reconstruction project in an amount not to exceed $150,000.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Kilberg. Seconded by Alderman Marks. Stephanie, preface?
Sure. So the cities of Geneva and St. Charles are collaborating in a reconstruction project for Couts Road between Longest Drive and Swenson Avenue. The project has progressed into the land acquisition phase. The fiscal year 22 annual budget provides $150,000 within the Infrastructure Capital Projects Fund to secure these properties with the source funding provided through Rebuild Illinois funds. Similar to motor fuel tax funds, an authorizing resolution attached for your consideration in the packet is required to be adopted prior to expending these funds. Upon completion of the land acquisition, the project will progress to final design with construction bid letting anticipated for spring of 2022. And then we do have Director Babica present if there's any questions.
Any questions regarding item 12A for Director Rich Babica? This is a long time coming, isn't it, Mr. Babica?
Yes, sir.
It's good news,
Looking forward to it.
and your enthusiasm is infectious. Thank you very much.
Same time as East State Street.
We have a motion and a second, folks. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kosarog,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Swanson,
Aye.
Bruno,
Aye.
Ruby.
Aye.
With 8 in the affirmative, 0 in the negative, and 2 absent, the motion has been adopted. Item 12B is to recommend resolution number 2021-72, authorizing the purchase of an 1-ton carrier condenser unit, air handler unit, and duct heater from R.J. O'Neill Mechanical Contractors in the amount of $32,290, and authorizing the city administrator to approve up to $2,583.20 in change orders for a total not to exceed amount of $34,873.20. Is there a motion? Motion by Alderman Marks on item 12B. Is there a second? Seconded by Alderman Mayor. Ms. Dawkins.
Okay, so during routine maintenance inspection, it was discovered that one section of the HVAC system at Public Works had failed. The system controls the heating and cooling of the training room, the fleet maintenance supervisor's office, the emergency management offices, and a supervisor's office. The condenser unit is original to the building, and the evaporator coil has failed along with the heating element. The unit uses R22 refrigerant, which is being phased out, and though it's available, it would cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $12,000 to $8,000. This, along with the new evaporator coil, is over half the cost of a new unit. Staff received 3 quotes. R.J. O'Neill was the lowest quoted price, and then you may recall I put this in my CA report as this is coming straight to council instead of Cal first, and that's because we've been informed that as of September 1st, I believe there will be an 8% increase on the quote. So this replacement would be funded by the electric fund, the wastewater and wastewater fund, and the general fund in equal percentages. That's the word I'm looking for. Superintendent Landers is here this evening if you have any additional questions.
Questions or comments for Superintendent Landers regarding item 12B? Hearing none, seeing none, sensing none. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Kostrog,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor,
Aye.
Swanson,
Aye.
Bruno,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
Kilburg.
Aye.
Item 12B has been adopted with 8 affirmative votes, 0 negative votes, and 2 absent. Item 12C, folks, is the Sanitary Sewer Evaluation and Facility Plan Update presentation by our friends at Deutschler and Associates. I think Mr. Van Gescam, Superintendent Van Gescam, will present some opening remarks.
Good evening. Bob Van Gescam, Superintendent of Water and Wastewater. Tonight we have with us John Frerick, Chris De Silva, and Bobby Peters with Deutschler Engineering, and they are going to go over a presentation that they've put together that describes in some detail the evaluation that they've been working on the sanitary sewer system for the past few years. We can take questions after the presentation, and then I have a couple follow-up items quick items to go over. So I will go ahead and hand it off to Chris or Bobby.
Thank you. All right, pardon the date, prepared for last week here. But I'm Chris, I haven't met most of you. But yeah, I'm an engineer with Deutschler, and I've been helping on this project for a while now. I live over in Elburn, but my parents are in Geneva, so I'm happy to be here working with you guys. This is a large project, and we want to kind of give you some background on a few things we're working on and some of the recommendations that we're coming to. So, we're going to talk a little bit on the basics of sanitary sewer overflows. Many of you are familiar with this topic. Something that we're working on holistically here. Talk a little bit about why they happen, just for brief background, and then all the work we have been doing out in the field in Geneva system, and then some of our proposed methods to deal with those issues. And leading to the fourth bullet is sort of one of our big recommendations is to do rehabilitation of private laterals on people's homes. So we'll get into that and why we think that's a good idea. And then we'll talk about
the river crossing. It's a 20-inch river crossing that we've been studying extensively to figure out if it is adequate to handle the storm flows and things. So we'll talk through that, and then kind of at the end briefly about the system as a whole. So,
Chris, I'm going to interrupt you just for a moment.
Go ahead.
Can I trouble you to come a little bit closer to the microphone?
Sure. And do you mind if I take off my mask?
No, feel free to do so.
All right, that'll help. Thank you.
My mother just texted and said, "What is he saying?"
Well,
I'm just kidding.
make sure she can hear. So yeah, our project really focuses on kind of the inner part of Geneva here. The plant is right by the river, so the sewer all work their way to there. So this figure shows 6 specific basins we've been studying. All of these basins have had specific sanitary sewer overflows, either within basements or in manholes into the river. So we've been looking at each of these extensively, doing a lot of field work to analyze them, as well as look at kind of how they all come together in the middle. On this map here, we have several red dots. These are the locations of the reported sanitary sewer overflows in the city. So there's an obvious trend here. You have a sort of an outer ring of local problems, either in neighborhoods or at right kind of the end of some of these where the sewers come together. And then there's also an issue right by the plant. So our basic strategy has been to solve those local issues first, work on the outside, and then work our way into the plant and deal with sort of whatever's left. So the more that we can, water we can keep out of the sanitary system on the far reach, the better it'll be at the middle. So that's kind of how we've structured our projects, how we've been working methodically and kind of going through all these. But kind of as we've gotten along, we've studied just about every basin at this point. We're still working on downtown, but that's kind of we're at the point now to talk through some of that. So I'm going to hand it off to Bobby here a little bit to talk a little bit about why the issues happen and what we've been doing in the field so far.
I'm Bobby. I'm a project engineer with Deutschler. And real briefly, I want to talk about what's causing these problems and typical industry standard methods to fix them. So up here on the slide, you can see on the left, we have a sanitary sewer main, and on the right, we have a sanitary sewer manhole. And these images do a pretty good job of identifying the different deterioration occurrences that can happen over time on the public infrastructure. You have cracks, joints are often a location where roots can get in, and also stormwater infiltration as well. So here are 2 good visuals from the Geneva East area that we televised and rehabilitated within the last year. On the left, you have a joint leak coming in. As you can see at the joint, that's a typical location in clay sewers where you'll see stormwater infiltrate into the sanitary system. And then root intrusion. Typically with the root intrusion, you'll also get gaps where the storm flow can also enter. And as well, as you can see, these roots pose a blockage to the flow as well, so they also reduce capacity within the system as well. So here are a couple visuals for manholes. Top left, you can see the roots entering the manhole. On the top right image, a no bench. Bench refers to the area of a manhole where it kind of forms the flow channel for the flow to pass through. When there's no bench, that often causes hydraulic restriction, and that also will reduce the capacity of the system. And the image there, taken from Geneva East on Westfield Course there, as you can see where the main line exits the manhole, you can see an active leak coming in at the pipe seal. All right, so here's a list of different industry standard methods used to rehabilitate these defects in order to properly seal up the system. So the two main underground methods for the sanitary sewer are cured in place pipelining, which if you think of like a sock unfolding. It goes into the sanitary sewer, it unfolds, and then the contractor will cure it in place. It'll harden, and that creates basically a pipe within a pipe. It's a structural fix. It also does a good job of keeping out the unwanted storm water. Grouting is a cheaper alternative when the pipe is in pretty good shape, but you still have the infiltration entering. They'll go in, they'll inflate a packer, they'll conduct an air test on it. If it fails, that means there's gaps where stormwater can enter, and they'll fill it with a chemical grout to seal up the joint at that point. And then the one you want to avoid, because it's obviously most costly and most intrusive, is digging it up and replacing it. That is kind of a last resort, if you will, if the other 2 options are not feasible with the given technology. And then there's a list of different manhole rehabilitations. Some common locations where infiltration get in manhole is at the top of the manhole, where you have a lot of joints with the concrete rings meeting the frame and the cone section of the structure. So typically, what'll happen there is a contractor will come in, they'll rip out the first couple feet, replace it with new concrete rings, mastic, and then they'll put an external seal on it to keep the infiltration from even coming in contact with those joints. So that's one of the more common ones. And then also too with manholes, if you see leaks in the walls, what you'll do is you'll grout the manhole similar to the grouting process that I just described for the sewer. And then for structural repairs, and something that actually I'm looking at right now for a lot of the downtown manholes, because they're older manholes constructed of brick. So typically those manholes, they're in need of a structural lift. So we'll recommend a structural cementitious coating, where a contractor will come in and in 2 phases they'll spray the structure with a cement lining to give it a new structural stability. So a good percentage of unwanted stormwater into the sanitary sewer system comes from the private sector. And these figures I'm about to say range from community to community, and even from area of town to area of town, but typically 15 to 20% of unwanted stormwater peak flows come from public sector, and probably 30 to 40% come from the private sector. So here's a diagram kind of showing the different parts of the private sector where it can come from. Similar to the mainline sewer that we talked about, the service line running from the home to the street is an often uninspected part of the system. Homeowners aren't, unless there's a problem, they're not going to really look at it. Whereas the sanitary sewers and the publicly owned sanitary sewers are inspected more often, and problems can be identified much sooner. And preventative maintenance is often more taken much further on or earlier in the process. And then more towards the right, you can kind of see some more direct connections. You have the downspout directly connecting there on the home, and then also some pumps can potentially be a problem as well. So here are two visuals also from the Geneva East area taken recently within the last year. Root intrusion, same type of problem we looked at before, but now you have the roots coming in at the connection point to the sanitary main. So that camera is in the sanitary main looking up at the lateral. And same thing there with the corrosion with mineral deposits that you can see on the right-hand side there. Same thing, the camera's in the sanitary main looking up at the service connection. So here are two industry standard methods used to rehabilitate in the private sector, going from the main to the service connection. So the first one there on the left is what's called a T-liner. So what I described for the cured in place pipeliner, this is the same type of process, but now we're coming from the main going up the service connection. It creates a pipe within a pipe. It's a structural fix, but also removes the unwanted stormwater. And then on the right is a picture of the packer that I was describing. That yellow tube is the packer going, the packer going up the resident's sanitary connection, and it'll inflate, do an air test, and then if it fails, which as you see on the next slide, a very large percentage of them do, it'll get inflated. The grout will get pumped out and seal up the service connection as well as the service lateral. So here, like I was saying, we did a rehabilitation project recently in the Geneva East area, and I've got some figures up there for so we did some public sector grouts. So we went through and did mainline joint air test and grouts on the mainline joints. Basically every sewer in that neighborhood that was not lined was air tested and grouted. And as you can see, there was about a 19% failure rate, which means that the air test failed, so it did not hold the air pressure, and the joint was grouted, which means that there's potential for stormwater to enter into those joints. And then at the bottom there, this is something that really jumped out to us. We knew it'd be greater, but we didn't know it'd be this to this degree. So we recommended grouting for active leaks that we saw during the evaluation process, as well as any services that were a part of the lining process, because we wanted to seal those pipes up completely. That's kind of an industry standard way of doing things on that side of things. So there's about 145 services that we air tested, which we just air tested the first 5 feet. We didn't go up to the house or halfway to the house or anything of that sort. And 143 of them failed, so a 99% failure rate for the private sector. So you can see the difference between that and the public sector, and obviously the potential for a lot more stormwater to enter through the private system.
So You can see our traditional approach is to focus on the public system. It's what you own. It's what you're used to maintaining. It's your asset to maintain. And historically, that's kind of been the approach, as well as eliminating those direct connections, the downspouts, the sump pumps, because it's against your ordinance, easy to get that fixed. We try to avoid dealing with the private laterals because it's messy. It's people's homes. It's going underground. So it's really like we try and focus on the other ones too. That percentage jumps out, right? 99% of just those 145 connections we looked at were failing the air test. So not only do we have kind of the knowledge that they're old, they're not maintained, but we have a pretty big indication specifically in that area of what we're dealing with. These are some rough numbers here just to describe a little bit about the impact private laterals can have. So these are rough numbers at the top. About 120 miles of public sewer in the Geneva collection system. If you look at number of houses and residents, average private lateral anywhere from 70 to 100 feet, depends on when the sewer is, it's 120 and up. So it gives you that number that Bob was talking about. From a linear foot perspective, about half of the sewers in the combined system are about private lateral, just to put that number in perspective. So essentially we're getting to the point where we're doing a lot of public work. We don't think we can ignore the private laterals anymore. We think that they are a significant contributing source of storm water getting into the sanitary system. So we think it's worth doing a pilot test on a small area to see, A, if we're right, will this keep the water out, and what are some of the challenges of working on private property, and funding that, and deal with some of these challenges. The main reason that we think this is worth pursuing, so A, we think it will help seal up the problem. So keeping the water out, seal up, we're trying to seal up basically public sewer, public manholes, and private connections. If we can do all three of those, there's no more places the water enter in, we can deal with the problem at the source. The third and fourth bullet is why we think that's a good idea. If we can do that, you can avoid the cost for the alternate approach, call it the more traditional capital expense approach, which involves new pump stations, new force mains, bigger sewers, and wet weather storage and treatment capacity. You also then have to maintain pumps and treat all of this stormwater that you shouldn't be dealing with in the first place. So again, we're a fan of the outside-in approach, but in this case, from what we've seen in the system, we think that in order to be effective, we're going to have to start looking at private laterals. So we're at the point where we think looking at a private lateral pilot test would be worth it. The area we have identified and are recommending to test this out is a small neighborhood just east of the river, north side of Geneva here, the Division area. It's an odd part of the system that has about 100 houses that actually go on a little 8-inch crossing west of the river, goes down by Wheeler Park, and then it crosses back over to the plant back on the east. So that's odd to begin with. But it creates this interesting hydraulic situation where that 8-inch crossing has a limited capacity. So whenever the stormwater in these 100 houses area exceeds the capacity, it overflows into the river. So this is the most frequent area of overflows in your system, even though it's only a little 100-house neighborhood, because of that little crossing there. There has been historical EPA involvement. Money's been spent, this area's been looked at before, and that's led to investigating that crossing and lining with what Bob was talking about, that cured in place lining. About 83% of the public sanitary system has already been fixed. Now I say there's been 11 SSOs in 5 years, that's after the lining. So this is a situation where we've already spent a fair amount of money on the public side and the problem is still there. So essentially, after looking at this area, what we are proposing is finish that level, last 17%, just in case, seal up that area, seal up the remaining manholes. Those are, again, it's not a whole lot, that's not too expensive. But use this area as a small situation to go ahead and either grout or line the private connections. And we think it'll be a strong case study to say, if it works, we'll know. If we have a lesson, SSOs on average twice a year there. So if it fixes the problem, we'll be able to see it. And then the last bullet is the other big reason. We've got a little red line on here. It was a previous study, basically with the traditional approach. A different consultant prepared a few cost estimates to either repurpose that river crossing into a pump station with a force main, or something that would have been a good idea a long time ago, and just put a pump station and force main and send it south and basically combine into the plant, so avoid crossing the river twice. So they looked at that, came up with a cost estimate. We didn't redo that work. We just scaled it to today's dollars. So here's why we're proposing to deal with the private laterals. Instead of building infrastructure to convey stormwater that shouldn't be in your system in the first place, we think you should keep it out and spend half the cost. And when I say the stormwater we're talking about, based on our extensive flow metering in this area, the sanitary overflow or the sanitary flow through this area is about, in our numbers, 0.03 MGD, I want to say, in this area. We regularly see flows above 0.3 and 0.5. So 90 to 95% of the water is stormwater during these events. So again, it's a leaky system. So you can see the numbers we're talking about. It's mostly in this area private work that we're proposing. For about 100 houses, for the worst ones, T-liners, particularly ones that have roots and things like that. And then grouting is slightly cheaper, and injecting that. So you see the cost we're talking about $3,500 to $5,000 per home that we're proposing to do. I should also preface, I probably should have put this in the beginning, I apologize for showing pictures of sewer systems. I realize not everybody sits around and looks at sewers, so hope nobody puked, so that's good. And I've showed that to family members and had adverse reactions. But I think it's good to show you what we're looking at and why we're coming to these conclusions. So that's what I wanted to go through on this side of things, so kind of the outside perspective. And obviously I'm focusing on this particular pilot area, but the reality of what we're looking at is if we did this approach and it was successful, we would look to roll it out to the other basins where possible. So the next big part of our study and big part of the equation is what's happening in the middle. So probably the biggest challenge in the city's collection system is everything in that red area all flows through a single 20-inch river crossing. So 20 inches, less than 2 feet, call it that big. So based on our flow metering, it's about 80% of the city's dry flow goes through a single pipe that big. It doesn't take an engineer to figure out that could be an issue. And there's only one pipe. Anything ever happens to that pipe, that sewer's got nowhere to go. So it's a resiliency issue. It's just a risk in and of itself. Even if we didn't have overflow issues, I would say it's the single biggest flaw in the collection system's design, is that 80% of the flow goes through one pipe. Start with that. No math, no engineering, just all that is what it is. The other challenge here is you have this critical asset and you don't have a way to send flow around it if you do want to inspect it and maintain it. We went through a pretty big effort last year to do that, and kind of got it blown up here on the right. The crossing, it's right by the pedestrian bridge, just a few blocks this way, comes off the corner River Lane, and basically goes right into the plant. We had to basically set up a bypass pump on the pedestrian bridge and go all the way across the river that way so that we could get in and inspect it. So again, that's a challenge from a longevity and a sustainability perspective, being able to maintain such a critical piece of infrastructure. The other reality is the size alone, when it's collecting water from that big an area that has all this stormwater getting in and all these neighborhoods, doesn't have the hydraulic capacity to convey all that. So it is the single largest amount of volume SSOing in the system. It comes from basically right upstream of that. The city staff go out and they basically deploy a pump and pump the sewage into the river to avoid flooding basements and homeowners in that. But it is an environmental issue that is essentially the source of what we're trying to deal with here. That's the general overview. We spent a lot of time and energy trying to figure out do we need another crossing? Is essentially the central question we were trying to answer. And one question is, well, if we do enough work fixing all the local issues, do we still need that crossing? And so we'll get into that. The other piece of the puzzle in the middle is we have this big crossing that's feeding into the wastewater plant. If you can get the water to the wastewater plant, it's going to be able to treat it. If it can't treat it, it's just going to back up into your system anyways. So to simplify things, essentially the plant is designed for certain capacity, has a maximum capacity, and then Geneva's got a really nice plant. It has this extra wet weather capacity that adds up to a total capacity of 16 million gallons per day. So from our perspective, to deal with this sanitary sewer overflow problem, any flow above 16 MGD at any given time that makes it to the plant backs up. So we got to keep flows below 16 MGD, otherwise, even if we can get it to the plant, it'll just back up anyways. So our solution is to try and keep it below that number in order to avoid this bottom bullet here. Again, the traditional approach of, let's say you built pump stations and upsized pipes, you've got all the water there, then you have to build the treatment infrastructure to treat it. And this is not a combined system. This should just be sanitary flow. So I don't want to stand here and tell you you need another Headworks primary settling tank filters and disinfection system in order to treat more flow. But instead, theoretically, that is the alternative here. So we came up with a cost just to put it on paper, but our goal is to avoid that infrastructure by dealing with it at the source and then looking at the criticality of this river structure. So just kind of some background of what we were looking at here. So we did a lot of engineering and fancy math and computer modeling to look at this question here, and some good field work. These triangles here represent different flow meters that we put in the collection system. So basically our goal here was to put flow meters on every major sewer that feeds the wastewater plant. Wanted to figure out where's all the flow coming from during dry weather and, more importantly, wet weather. Luckily, we were able to get this in prior to last year's rains. Up until a few months ago, this has been really drier, but last year we had some pretty wild flows in April and May. So we got a lot of good data to work with and understand the system in its entirety, really. And so essentially what we did, we put these flow meters out, we got a whole bunch of data. We went out and surveyed every manhole and the collection system to develop a hydraulic model, basically from the triangles into the plant, so that we could analyze with some certainty of the hydraulics of this system and therefore the impact of the river crossing on the system. We calibrated that to all the data we got, and then we do this thing in the wastewater where we scale the storm to a certain recurrence interval, which we call a 5-year storm and a 10-year storm, if you've heard terms like that, just as a design standard, if you will. So we basically shift the storm up and down in intensity. And then what we did is we tried changing things in the model and see what helped. So the primary things we did is we added a second crossing. So then we had 2 crossings going into the plant. And we then went with the outside-in type of approach where we cut off flow from getting to the system to begin with. What if we are able to seal up the sewers, manholes, and private laterals? What would the impact be in the middle? So we basically ran a scenario where no rehab, don't seal up anything, just seal the public system up, seal the public system and the private side up. Now we'd like to do this analysis once we've done a pilot test to see if our rough numbers are good. We did it based off of other people's studies, other attempts. Naperville actually has a big program where they do the similar strategy, so we used some of their results. And so we did that. We then ran those same scenarios with 2 river crossings and basically did some side-by-side comparisons. And then the 2 main things we were looking at to see how well this works is, does it fix the overflows at the river crossing, and does it overwhelm the wastewater plant? So I'll show you some fun bar charts in a second here. Essentially what we were using as a metric of if the wastewater plant overflowed is we look at the pump station and we see does the water in the pump station back up. If the pumps can't keep it down, then it'll back up into the system. So what I'm going to show you is graphs of the wet well level at the pump station for the plant. So, first two graphs here. So blue is going to be the existing 20-inch river crossing. Orange is going to be if you had two 20-inch river crossings. The first pair is if you did no rehab. Second pair is if you just worked on your public system. Your third pair is if you did the public and the private system. So I'm going to look at kind of two different pairs individually to show you our conclusions. The first one is a nice clear comparison. If you do no rehab, no crossing, this is what it is today, and you had a 5-year storm similar to what we had in April last year, you will have overflows in the system. And you notice the blue bar is at 8.79 feet in the wet well. That red line is where it should max out. So it gets to 8 feet. So it gets slightly above what it should be, but it basically is keeping up. When we had a second river crossing, you see the orange bar shoot up, which means, great, we've got the flow to the plant, it can't handle it. So that first side-by-side says, yes, in today's conditions, the river crossing is a bottleneck. 20 inches is not enough to handle the storm coming to it. So we say, all right, confirmed. The second scenario, we say, what if we did public rehab in those 6 basins? If we dealt with some of those, same situation, not quite as bad though. So the short answer there is, if you built the river crossing and did public rehab, the pump station would still be overwhelmed. The third scenario, public and private rehab, you're essentially keeping the flow from from overwhelming the plant. It's staying below that red line there. And the river crossing has capacity with or without the double crossing, which does pose the interesting question of, if we did public and private, could we avoid the second crossing? And the short answer is, theoretically, but it'd be a dangerous thing to do because of the resiliency issue. You still have one, it's still hard to maintain. It's 40, 50 years old. And this is a modeling world where I haven't exactly modeled 5-year storm. If it's a 6-year storm, then it overflows. So the short answer is, in order to avoid infrastructure at the plant for more treatment capacity, you need to be in the public plus private, which will also fix the localized issues. You can avoid the plant, and then the river crossing adds a lot of safety and resiliency as far as getting the hydraulic capacity across. So this is our proposed concept right now. So this is kind of a zoomed in version of the GIS here, the map. So you see the green line on top is the existing crossing. Originally, we were thinking we would just add a second crossing right there. But when we sit down and said, hey, how would you actually do it? Construction in that area is going to be tough. You're coming off of a residential area, coming to a little wooded area. So you'd be setting up there and then going across there underneath the railroad, right by the old bridge there, onto the bike path. Not a lot of room to work. You're working, the right side is on the railroad property. As a civil engineer, I try to avoid the railroad as much as possible. So construction challenge. So we asked, how could we get the same benefit? We came up with basically the blue proposal, which would be 2 crossings, but south. So right on the southern part here, you're coming off of the county building excess flow parking lot. So easy to get construction equipment in, easy to access it there, and you can go directly into the plant. That's the plant property on the right. So you don't have to deal nearly as much with the railroad, one perk, and just the constructability looks a lot easier to us. From a cost perspective, talk about that in a second, it's expensive, but if you're gonna dam a river and put in a crossing, putting a second pipe in doesn't add a lot of cost. At the end of the day, if you're in the middle of the Fox River, the 1,000-some feet of pipe here is not the expensive part of this project. So doing a second double bale crossing, we think makes a lot of sense. And then we can decide during design, if it went this way, of what to do with the existing crossing, if you keep all 3, if you have some type of redundancy between them, kind of a design question. So it is a big expensive cost here. We're looking grand total engineering estimate of $4.6 million to do this. But again, it's one of these probably the biggest cost impact on your collection system, for what I see is one of the biggest weaknesses in the system to do so. And essentially, we recently did a river crossing with Fox Metro Water Reclamation District near Aurora, if you're familiar with them. So that's where our costs are based off of. We did it with them about 5-6 years ago. So we've done it before. It is a challenge. It requires a lot of permitting, a lot of detailed design. It takes some time, but can be done. The other reason we propose this spot, or not, or potential benefit, is we are right by that utility poles going over it. So I think Rich and I have talked briefly about the possibility of cost sharing if we were to do that. So that's what we're looking at. I think it adds a lot of resiliency. And I'll kind of show you the overall dollars I'm talking about for a giant project here. And keep in mind, these numbers are proposals based off studying all 6 of those basins individually, dealing with the local SSOs in each one of those basins, and dealing with this problem at the middle. So alternative 1, the outside-in approach, is what I've been pitching this whole discussion. So basically dealing with the public system and dealing with the private system about half and half. When it comes down to it, it's a similar, same cost as what we're talking about. And then the river crossing. So 16 million grand total. This is something that could be spread out over time. A lot of different ways to tackle this. All of this is EPA, can be EPA loan funded. We did talk to EPA about using EPA loan if you wanted to do it for private lateral work, the river crossing, or the public rehab. All of that is eligible. So we did look at that. 2 is the alternative approach. We call it the inside or out approach, or the traditional method, which is building infrastructure to get the water to the plant and build the plant infrastructure to deal with it. So that wet weather storage and treatment is the big ticket item, and then those items below it are those additional pump stations, force mains, sewer enlargement areas that you would need to do to get the water there. So there's clearly a cost argument here to attempt to tackle the private lateral work. And it, again, I think you can solve a lot of problems with one holistic approach here. So in general, that's what we think makes sense based on our individual collective system and solving all these individual small problems, Geneva East Division, Fargo 2E, 2F Division, solving all those individual problems, and then adding the resiliency of a second crossing. With that, we think you can give yourselves a really good shot to greatly reduce the SSOs in the city. And we think private lateral work is a tough thing to do. Again, no smoke and mirrors there. It's not an easy type of work to do, which is why we think a pilot test in a small area is worth attempting and at least discussing what that would involve to see if this works. Obviously, if we decide that that's not going to be viable for one reason or the other, then we have to start thinking about other options. So again, it's all about dealing with the problem at the source, working your way in, and avoiding as much costly infrastructure as we can, and just maintaining the infrastructure out in the system. So, sorry for throwing a lot of big numbers out here. This is just a possible way to start tackling this issue. And again, I think no matter what you do, it's something you do over time. You're talking years of working one basin at a time, dealing with both the public side, the private side, and then whenever dealing with the river crossing fits into this plan, you could do. This is just kind of an example to show how we could approach this to spread things out. I think that's the end of my presentation here. Before I hand it back to Bob, is there any other questions that people want to bring up?
Questions and comments from the dais. Just a reminder to our council members that tonight's not about deciding exactly which option or even a river crossing, what have you, but just general questions, because all of you are aware that we're going to be discussing this at great length in the coming months, and certainly at our strategic planning workshop. So, Alderman Bruno, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. So tell me more about the private laterals. Now, you did tests which had a high failure rate. You tested 5 feet of the private laterals where
Correct.
you, 140 some. Would you be sealing just 5 feet, or would the actual rehabilitation include the entire length? Because there could be 40, 60 feet of private.
Exactly. Our proposal would be to plan from a costing perspective to do the first 30 feet.
30 feet, okay.
So roughly half of it type of thing, to try and get the majority of it. I think historically other studies have found that the worst spot is near the connection. So you definitely want to do like bare minimum the first 5 feet. I think based on what other cities and sites have been founding, somewhere in the 20 to 30 range seems to be effective. But it's something that in the field, it might be one of the factors we are looking at.
So, yeah, so 30 feet, I could see that generally gets you out of the public right-of-way, out of traffic vibration, that type of thing. You're well into the private properties, okay? That makes sense. So when you had the chart with the pump capacity,
Yeah.
and throwing the kitchen sink at it, seems like we just got it within capacity. Am I reading that correctly?
Yeah, essentially. Yeah. So what that means is you have all of your pumps are pumping, and you're pumping at what the plant can handle.
So we wouldn't have excess capacity in that case.
Correct. That's
For a
correct.
projected 5-year storm, so
Yeah.
theoretically, once every 5 years, it would get that bad. Yes.
Okay. That's it for now. Thanks.
Anyone else? Alderwoman Ruby,
Thank you.
Alderman Mayor.
So another question on the laterals. Do you know, is this ever something that would be a liability of the builder of the subdivision? Or is this just a failure due to time? Or what sort of variables are we looking at?
Sure. Feel free to jump in, guys. If you want to. Yeah.
And also,
Get into the liability
is-
question.
does homeowners insurance ever cover anything like that? If you happen to know, those are my questions on that.
Sure. Generally, kind of like our city system, it's good for a, length of time, but then it starts deteriorating. So that's what we're finding in private laterals also, is it's not a matter of was it constructed properly or not. It's a matter of just the clay sewer pipe itself. It's takes all sorts of ground fluctuations, and over time it's going to get cracks in it. The gaskets are going to dry up in the connections, and over time it's just going to let in that infiltration.
So this is typical wear and tear.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and so no homeowners insurance? Do you know about that?
No, I really can't speak to that.
Okay,
So-
I was just curious if that might be able to
Right.
help some people out. Let's see. So you've talked a lot about the 100 homes and the two river crossing. I'm just curious, that only addresses that one section of town, correct?
Correct, but
Okay.
as a whole, though, all that flow does go down to the plant.
Sure.
And it will have an impact once it reaches the west side of the town and then crosses back over to east. So any benefit that we can achieve for lessening flow does have an impact to the plant. But this area is pretty unique in that, it is just those 100 homes, and before it ever crosses going to the west side of the river, we have overflows. And we know that, the majority of the city system has been rehabilitated. So the next spot to look at is the private laterals.
Okay. I know in Geneva East, there was a voluntary sump pump inspection. I'm curious, do you have any data on that? What kind of success did you have with that, with people letting you in their homes?
Yeah,
And what did you find?
Sure. We did not find any illegal or improper connections from
Okay.
the sump pumps. I want to say 75%.
70%, yeah.
70% of
the
the
homes
people
were
that
entered?
we entered.
Okay, that's good. Yeah, that's my ward, so I'm just really concerned with getting some relief to the Geneva East area, and I understand all of Geneva is important. I just have to go to bat for my ward, so I really want to see
Sure.
some relief in Geneva East.
Well,
in
we're really
particular.
hopeful that the amount of money that was spent on the city system and doing the 5 feet of, private laterals where we did find leaks will make a huge impact, but only time will tell once we get a larger storm, which I'm not any rush to see.
Sure. Okay, so the private laterals are currently just as is, nothing has been done, correct?
Right,
That was one
right.
of the proposals?
Correct.
Okay. And again, with Alderman Bruno, you said you would do something to 30 feet, line 30 feet?
It
Or
could
what
be
was-
lining, it could be grouting, it would
Okay,
depend
so-
on the condition of the pipe at that, when
Fix
it becomes
or
inspected.
address, improve 30 feet, okay?
Right.
Okay, that's all for now, thank you.
Sure.
Alderman Mayor, then Alderman Marks.
I had a couple questions. I think they're for you, I'm pretty sure. Are all the pipes in Geneva clay? Or is that the typical for our sanitary piping?
I can hit a little bit of that. The majority of the pipe that was put in the ground, let's say before 1980, is clay. Otherwise, it's some of the larger pipe is concrete that was put in years ago, but all the new subdivisions are now PVC since probably I would say mid to late 80s.
And
So all the Fisher Farms, for example, that's all
Right.
PVC, but anything from like the Pepper Valley area or Fargo, that's all clay pipe.
okay. And Geneva East is all clay.
There,
Most of it.
it's got a
anyway, not the
mixture.
90s version?
It does have some areas that does have some PVC. It was just a combination of materials over there.
Is the PVC performing better than the clay as far as this infiltration problem goes?
I think so.
Yeah, typically. And there's also some ductile iron as well.
Join us at the microphone if you're going to add some comments. That's just helpful for those tuning in from home. Thank you.
Sorry, yes. I'm sorry, what was the question again?
Is the PVC performing better than clay as far as infiltration?
Typically it does, yeah. So the areas that we're more focused on are the older areas, the clay areas. That's where we're seeing the localized SSO issues. And with all the flow metering that we've done, that's where we've seen the most severe impacts of the stormwater entering the system.
Okay. And the Geneva East, it's charging the system and causing it to flow into the basements, right? That's the essential problem there, is that the system gets charged and then backflows?
Yes, yep. So it's a combination of excess flows entering the system, more than the system can handle. And also, we're looking currently. We've actually, since the May storms of last year, we've added a couple more flow meters downstream to kind of further identify the hydraulic restrictions, because we had a flow meter at the bottom of Manchester that identified a hydraulic restriction something further downstream. So since we put those meters in, like Bob was alluding to, we really haven't had that big storm yet, which obviously we're okay with. But we're waiting on that next big storm to kind of collect the data from that and kind of pinpoint, okay, where is the next 500 feet where we're seeing another restriction. So that's next on the agenda for that Geneva East problem.
Okay. The next thing I wanted to ask was, so this area that you've chosen has a lot of problems, and you're calling it a pilot program, but it seems very unique to me. And I always think of a pilot program as something that's going to tell us answers for the rest of the situation, right? The Division Street homes were built right around the war, right? Like 1950s-ish. So are they really going to give us the information? Is doing the work there going to give us the information that we need to make decisions about the rest of the problem?
You're right in saying it's one of the worst areas. I think that is probably true. I think what it would give us a lot of input information on is the reality of trying to do this work, and it's a proof of concept. if it works, can we start avoiding infrastructure? The big push is you've already invested a lot of money in the public side there, and it's small, so it's the you have the least to lose if for some reason this doesn't have the results we're hoping for. If it doesn't work in Division, it's not going to work anywhere else. Put it that way. So yes, you could take a different approach and take a newer one, a bigger basin, spend more money on it, and then take someone that's a little more middle of the road as far as age. That is another approach too. But again, in order to make this concept work, you have to tackle every house. So the bigger you go, the more money you invest in the idea, if that makes sense. But there is an argument to go that way. I don't think that's wrong necessarily. But again, I think for us, it's the easiest point of entry to try the concept for a program that we've never done in the city.
One thing I'd like to add on that, though, for the Division area, you already had an EPA notice of violation in that area, and you have a compliance commitment agreement for that particular area. So further inaction in that area would potentially cause EPA enforcement action, and so that's why we want to target this one, to avoid that down the road, so that you can kind of complete that, get that compliance commitment agreement completed and done, and avoid the SSOs at that location. So that's another reason, kind of really the large reason to target Division in this particular case.
Yeah. I can see that part of it. I just think maybe there might be some additional testing to do in other areas to get to the long-term answer if we need to.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing too with Division. Since you've already done so much public lining and work there, there's only, as you've shown, I think we only have about $80,000 left of public improvements. So really the only thing to do is the private. So that's why that particular area would identify more so. So if you really wanted to do other areas, well, now you're going to have to invest in the public sector as well, so that cost just continue to rise, and to do both. So this is kind of like, you've already done so much, let's finish it off and see what that shows, and that will document then what will then be used throughout the other basins. It'll be a good study then.
So does your cost estimate include fixing the problems with the private leads into the house, or is it just a study of it that?
No, it actually does.
Find the problems?
No, it actually does. So in this particular case, what we were talking about, the costs, you have really about $70,000 for public manhole rehab, another $40,000 for the public sewer grouting to finish off the main line aspects, and then really $400,000 towards the private laterals, and that would be fixing the private laterals to that point. And then that would be that full study. The only other alternative at this point would be a pump and force main at twice the cost.
Right.
To avoid that compliance commitment agreement and that notice of violation that you had.
What's the fine associated with that? And just for the information. A lot, right?
Well, it could be, yeah. It's really dependent on EPA and what they wanted to do.
But they're big ticket violations.
Correct. Yes.
Okay. That is all.
Alderman Marks, sir.
Alderman Mayor asked my question, so.
Alderman Kilberg, sir.
Just to put things in perspective, if I remember correctly, I think the May 2020 storm that we had here in Geneva, that over a 2 or 3 day period, there was a day, if I remember correctly, when the waste treatment plant handled somewhere around almost 24 million gallons of water through the facility. So you saw numbers up there that really are a lot less than what we really dealt with in that storm. And Bob, you might answer the question, what happens when our system can't handle all that water and waste?
Yeah, sure. When we talk about what the plant handled, whether it be 20 million, 22 million, 24 million, we're talking about a pretty short span of time during that peak flow period. So it's not a let's say a 12-hour event. It may have been an hour or two that the plant handled 20 million. but we gradually bring that down to the 16 million. So I just want to clarify that, but
That's where it peaked at, essentially, is what you're saying.
exactly. Yeah, we were able to handle everything without overflowing clarifiers and things like that.
And on a typical day, 3.5 million is, I think,
Correct.
the number you, so it was about 7 times the capacity of our system.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what happens is we have staff that goes around and monitors the different areas that Chris pointed to. And then if we know that based on our experience that flow is getting to a point where it's going to start backing up homes, then we will put pumps into the system and bypass pump into the storm system. So.
Yeah, I think the reality of it is Geneva's had growth over the last 35 years. If you recall driving into Geneva in 1986, the population of this community was 9,900. Today we're at 23,000. So obviously a lot of homes have been added, and the system doesn't have sufficient capacity to handle what was engineered 40 or 50 years ago.
Yeah, I mean,
in a nutshell, that's what you're really saying.
Right.
As well as the system over time has continued to deteriorate.
yes.
Correct.
And then just kind of one thing about your flow rates. Engineers and EPA were kind of a little funny this way, but there's actually, we use the same like designation, million gallons a day, but you can have a design daily average flow, a design maximum flow, a design peak hourly flow, and a design peak instantaneous flow. So you kind of have to account for all 4 of these flow rates, and we all use the same like MGD designation, so it just looks odd, but the plants can handle that, the different peaks, but it's only a short time duration peaks. So just to help clarify that when we're talking about the different flow rates, you kind of have to be, yeah.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Sure. And perhaps one thing to add to your comment about, Geneva does have portions of the system that are old. I think that's obviously true. But your first comment about dry flow being 3.5 MGD. So, in the engineering world, the system itself can handle dry flows, right? On a day like this, the last year, it's been good. So I think all the work we do maintaining the old is successful, but certainly the 3.5 MGD to the 20 MGD, that's a lot of stormwater. So that's kind of where we're tackling.
And I guess I had one more question. Could you explain a little bit, how do we tap into the private sewer line, and how invasive is that on the property? Essentially, do you go to the main sewer line and you hit that T and you dig down, and what happens then?
Yeah, I'll elaborate on that.
Yeah, so
I mean, as a resident, I think as you talk about this, I think people would be concerned as to how much damage you're going to do to their landscaping and property to get this accomplished.
Sure. So assuming that there's no, collapse of the actual connection or the lateral itself for that first 30 feet, before the contractor will do the T-liner or the grouting, they'll televise it first. They'll televise. They'll come in from the main line, so they'll park a truck over the sanitary manhole, the publicly owned sanitary manhole.
They'll snake in to find it.
Basically, yep. And then they'll camera it first to see, okay, can we grout it? Can we T-line it? Do we have to dig it up if we're going to rehabilitate it? Obviously a good portion of it you can do, the T-lining and the grouting will come from the main line. You can do that without digging or any interaction, on the private property in that case.
So if there's no digging involved, then you're really not disturbing the existing structure. I'm thinking sometimes you can do more damage if you actually are tapping in and excavating and trying to repair to where you exacerbate the problem. I don't know. Is that
it's not so much that it's more expensive to dig that up, and obviously it's a lot more intrusive to dig up somebody's yard and to do that work. So those are probably the 2 biggest reasons why we want to do the T-liners and the grouting first.
Okay, so this this isn't going to be similar to what's happened in Geneva here over the last 10 years as far as cable and some of the burying of cable with the various
No, we'll try to do the best we can with the technologies given, that it would be what's called trenchless technology. But there may be, it depends on
we've
the
seen a
location
lot of
there.
that.
Yeah, right. Oh, I know. But there may be, for example, a need for a clean out. So, but usually either we dig or we'd excavate at certain points and points to put a clean out within that service line if one doesn't already exist. So that might be one point. The unusual thing for the division area, though, all the sewers, public sewers, are located in the rear yards. So this will be kind of a different situation, because we're gonna have to get access to the mainline manholes in somebody's rear yards. So I want that to be out there right away, at that point, because those are located in public easements, in rear yards or side yards. So, there will be an access point in order to get the equipment to the mainline manhole in order to be able to do these
Well,
laterals.
the main isn't really on Division, and it's behind. It would be along Oak Hill Cemetery, huh? Some of it.
Some of it, yeah.
Some of it, correct. Yeah, but it's all in the rear yard
Right. It
easements.
would be on the north side of Oak Hill.
Yes. Yeah. So.
But I just wanted to point that out for access and excavation and disruption.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yep.
Appreciate your answer.
Before I recognize Alderman Bruno, Alderwoman,
I'm the only one.
I know.
Thank God she's nice.
Alderman Kosarog, then Bruno, then Ruby, since both Ruby and Bruno have spoken already. Kosarog?
Thank you.
Sorry about that, guys.
I was just wondering what the lifespan or warranties or guarantees is for the T-liners and the grouting. Is there something that we can count on? A certain number of years, or a guarantee that probably they would provide, these companies that make the products would provide, or just an expected lifespan in general?
I should have anticipated that question. I'm not sure exactly offhand, but the lining is obviously the longer lasting, so that is a pipe within a pipe, and so that does have a much longer lifespan. I would, typically, like any other type of pipe, probably 30 years or so or more or longer. Grouting is a good, cheaper alternative, and it has come a long way. It used to be 10 to 15 years, but sometimes it can last up to 20 or longer. It just depends. Some of it depends on the groundwater table around it, but it's come a long way from what it used to be years ago. So it has become a much more effective and cheaper alternative. In fact, we've learned even, Naperville is way far advanced, in this, and they've kind of switched over to most grouting. They almost do that entirely within their subdivisions now. If that helps.
So there is no specific warranty that these companies would?
I don't know it offhand, but I can look that up and I can get that to Bob and we can get that in your hands.
No pressure. I was just kind of asking.
Sure.
Well,
Anything to add?
so within the contract documents, what we'll typically do for the grouting is have like an 11-month or a 12-month where they have to come back and air test the joints that they grouted to make sure they passed. So that's within the construction contract to get that test done within the year that the work was completed.
Okay.
So.
Okay. I guess I'm just thinking out loud with, obviously we want to spend less money. And so I get the approach and appreciate the cost savings that you guys are, but I do wonder if the other approach might be more durable equipment that would last longer and serve the citizens for a longer period of time, rather than 10 to 15 years. I think how long can we count on more of the capital improvement route? How long would that last? Probably 40, 50 years, obviously with some maintenance throughout.
Perfectly within, if that's good guidance. I mean, if that's what the city would want to do, we'd be more than happy to recommend that.
I'm not saying that. I guess that's just
Right.
what's going through my head is this is just going to become another problem again, maybe for the next generation, where we could really solve multiple generations the other way. I was also wondering, and maybe Alderman Kilbert kind of referenced this, but I wrote down, do we have access to the sewer lines? Obviously we do from what you're saying. Do we own them, the lateral lines from the houses? or do the homeowners own them?
I've been sitting on the edge of my chair all evening.
It's like a Moses moment, man. You see the crowd just go.
So Rich Babica, Public Works Director. 935, Section 935 of the City Code is very explicit and clear that service laterals are private property up to and including the connection to the sanitary sewer main. And that is going to be one of the trickiest parts of this project. We are going to have to secure permission and authority and execute temporary construction easements for every one of these sanitary service laterals before we move forward. And as you alluded to, once we touch it, we almost own it. I've been doing this job for 30 years. And I've had residents, at least monthly, if not weekly, say, your crews did this work 10 years ago, and now it's failed. Be it a driveway replacement, be it a parkway tree replacement. We just had one on the storm damage, where a resident said the storm killed the tree I planted 6 years ago in the 50/50 program, you need to replace it. So that is kind of the other thing we need to keep in mind as we're going through this. Is it going to, greatly reduce the likelihood of sanitary sewer backups? More than likely. But once we go down this path, the current rebate program that we have puts the ownership of that warranty on the resident, takes us out of the picture. With us doing this, that warranty eventually is going to, that person could call back the city 15 years from now and say, you lined this, it has now failed, it's your fault, I had a backup, you need to come out and fix it again. So that is something we need to keep in mind as we move forward to this. It's not just an engineering solution, there is a policy discussion that is in the overall level that we are moving in a fundamentally different direction from what the city code currently allows for.
Okay. I had a feeling. Okay, those are all my questions for now. Thank you.
Alderman
Stick it
Bruno.
off while I was talking.
Alderman Bruno, then Alderwoman Ruby.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for scaring the bejesus out of me, Rich. But Alderwoman Ruby reminded me of with sump pump tests. We also did smoke tests for downspouts. I think I asked this once before, but I can't remember the answer. Did we find much in the way of illegal downspout connections with our smoke tests?
I don't remember the numbers offhand, but we found a couple defects, but nothing similar to the sump pumps. It wasn't the cause of the problem.
Okay. That's it. Thanks.
Alderwoman Ruby.
Thank you. So just a question on the laterals again. Was there a cost estimate, like if that were to be on the homeowner? And I realize there are lots of variables here, but did you have any ballpark range on what the homeowner would be in for if they wanted to do this independently?
Yeah, so like on grouting, unit cost is roughly about $3,500 for a 30-foot stretch, and then T-liners is roughly about $5,000 for a 30-foot liner.
I will say, I think John's estimating that to be, if we went out to bid and did those, so we would get a good unit price. Whereas with our reimbursement program that we currently have for homeowners that would line it, the prices are ranging anywhere between $7,000 and $10,000.
Okay.
And we've had 4 to date.
Okay.
That have done that.
Okay. So it's possible we could consider like a 50-50 program for something like this as opposed to taking on the liability ourselves?
Once again, like Rich said, it'll be a, policy discussion.
Sure.
item.
Okay. Thank you.
Anyone else on the dais? Again, no action on this item. I liked how Alderman Cosper was like, no pressure. Yeah. Nice pun there. That was good. Just one moment, sir. Public comment from anyone in the audience tonight, or anyone joining us remotely who wish to either share news, ask a question? Yes, Mr.
Clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Of course.
Scott Lehman, Chamber of Commerce. Thinking creatively, remember when we brought in all the popcorn?
I do remember
Maybe we
that.
could get oversized sewers
Still
and
some
take
here.
tours of Geneva through the sewer system. Didn't sell, huh? I just want to make sure that on the proposal for the Festival of Vine, we still have some issues we're dealing with, but we still have the ability to adjust those issues as we have further discussions with you. Is that correct? On the Festival of Vine, the things we were talking about, some of the other issues that deal with that?
Right. The conditions, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, some of the issues that were still left open-ended.
Hours of operation, what have you, all that good stuff. I'm going to ask the city attorney to opine on this matter. And then I will, by all means, resume the chair, but and I kindly ask that our city council members focus on what the attorney's about to say.
The information in your packets identified conditions upon which permission would be given the chamber for the event. The listing on the agenda was more succinct. If there are any issues as to how the festival is to be run, my suggestion would be that it be discussed. If everyone is clear what they voted on, that it was in the packet, that there were conditions associated with the matter, so be it. But if there's any vague or unclear concepts, it should be addressed so that everyone's working from the same
And that,
sheet of music.
and to the city attorney's point, that can be addressed in a number of ways. We can entertain a motion to reconsider the matter and put it back on the floor to clarify, or just to gain more comfort. Or if you're comfortable with what you have voted on and you believe what you have voted on is that material which was in the packet, not the agenda language on the sheet of paper presented to you,
Because that was abbreviated.
because that was abbreviated. The floor is open for any questions prior to any motions being offered. Have I completely complicated the hell out of this? Let's
Why
make
don't you-
stormwater simple.
Why don't you explain the detail here, because I think I'm a little in the dark now.
Well, in your packet, ladies and gentlemen, you have considerable information with respect to the Festival of the Vine permit application, which have, I believe it's 7, quote, conditions. Those conditions are enumerated within the packet. When I announced the agenda item, reading the agenda language, it did not state specifically those conditions. So we could assume one of two things. Everyone read the packet in its entirety, and your vote was to vote for that material in the packet which had those conditions, or it was simply to vote to have the festival and call it a day. There are significant conditions within the material submitted in the packet. Those conditions include, but are not limited to, hours of operation of the carnival, etc. So they're significant.
So can I get clarification
Yes,
then
absolutely.
as to whether or not I voted to include the conditions or not to include the conditions?
There lies the rub.
Because I believed I was voting on with conditions.
You believe you were voting on with conditions.
Yes, on what it says here in the packet, which is how it, yeah.
And that's how, so the vote was with the conditions. Okay.
That's like we do everything. There's conditions.
Okay. Got it.
I assumed it was all those conditions, like we normally do.
Public comment still open. Mr. Lieben?
Okay, then I would like to present for you one issue that remains open for us and tell you how that has come, and we'll have to deal with what happens with it. I think we've dealt with most of the issues that are there today when I talked earlier with the mayor and with Kathleen. But the one issue that remains open for us is the issue of the carnival. We we've looked at ways of trying to bring in enough revenue stream and enough activity to get the city back to life in some way. We had an experience with the carnival for 3 days at Swedish Day, so we know we can operate them within that context. So we first had to go and see if we could add for the couple of days of the carnival to that, and we first went to the county. County was very involved with saying, yeah, go ahead, we'll give you the space. We were sort of surprised at that. Then we had to go to the carnival, say, would you be able to do it? Now, the carnival does bring in tax revenue. They do bring in support for the chamber, and that money comes back into the town, too. So it's also a revenue issue because we have not this year had the opportunity to get the kind of sponsorship we need to keep this going. And one thing that we have done this year is we kept all the salaried people on staff as much as we can. We hope we can continue to do that. So when we discussed this at the chamber level, we said two things. Number one, the people that are going to go to the carnival probably aren't going to be the same people that are drinking wine and going to the food festival. But we know that there are even members of the chamber who said, I'd bring my kids there and go there with my kids, and I wouldn't be bringing them over to the food festival. Some would too, I know that, but again, it's something for kids and families to come downtown and have another event that they aren't going to be taking them necessarily to the wine festival. We've done some other things at the festival, trying to use more stand-up tables to reduce the crowd there and deal with some of those issues too. So we'd like to have the opportunity to do that because at a 6 o'clock level, they can't do the carnival because they can't get enough revenue to set it all up and not have that. Now, they come with their own electricity. They're all generated themselves. They have security people that they hire to do the security there. They always have, they clean up their own rubbish, so we don't have a rubbish issue with them. So it was sort of an important thing that we thought if we could add that, we're really going to be able to at least generate, it's still going to be less than we did before, but at least generate a revenue. And also, it's there to try and show the town there are things back for kids. I was surprised at how many kids came to the carnival at Swedish Days, and parents with their kids came to there. So it's an important event for us, and we'd like to see ways that we could accommodate if there are issues, know what they are, and see if there aren't some other solutions for us to accommodate that. So that's the one issue that we wanted to make sure we discussed, because as I didn't say it at the time, because this is said it's recommended, it didn't say it was demanded. So we thought, well, the recommendations are on here, and then we can still work with the city on seeing how we could get around whatever the issues may be. So I didn't want to leave tonight and have you go and find out, well, it's gone, without us making at least that comment to you so you know where we stand. And the whole board has spent a long time trying to deal with this kind of an issue and see how we could bring this festival off, and so it's important to us. Anything else you'd want to add to that?
No, I think you did great, Scott.
Okay. I mean, the revenue section for the chamber, I remind you, some of you are new aldermen, membership dues count for 23% of our revenue. So that means the rest of the revenue has to come from sponsorships and what we can raise. If we can't raise it, we don't have flow of tax revenue where we can do these things to the city. And we're always doing it with safety for the city. How can we do this correctly? I was just up in Chaminade, Michigan, and they had a huge festival there with kids on a major highway. The kids who were with their parents stayed with their parents, and teenage kids know you don't run out in the street. So we just there wasn't an issue up there, and I don't think there'll be an issue with this. We haven't had an issue with the carnival before. And it keeps people over there, some over here. I think it'll help also keep the crowd down around the dinner time to sort of divide them up in places too. So we looked at a lot of different issues with it and thought it was a healthy idea to do, and it seems like that's the one sticking point. And I just presented to you with that. Okay?
Alderman Kasserag. Excuse me.
So, just to follow up on Mr. Levin's comments there, we're concerned that we don't have the manpower at night. Is that correct, Stephanie?
Is Commander Frieder's in the, I would actually defer to the police department if I may.
Sure.
Good evening. Correct. So based on what our current staffing is, looking at previous events, on how the festival is run for decades, the festival is in a very unique location, and adding to it across 38 adds inherent challenges for us to staff it. And we, at this point, are not comfortable that we would be able to adequately provide those resources where we could provide those services across those two venues.
And those services would really be helping people cross the street, or is there more to it than
It's
that?
a multitude. We
some-
staff detail officers up there that do provide not only security but also crossing. There they go work through the tent itself to ensure that there's safe service and consumption of alcohol. So to basically double it on the other side of the road would create kind of a staffing challenge for us right now.
Whereas if it was all together, that would be a little bit different of a story.
There would be a better flow to it for sure. It would allow us to be in one location with those assets that we have.
Are there any alternative ways of providing some of that security and detail aside from the main
Sometimes there are.
attraction itself?
Not the police presence that we're looking for.
I'll stop after this, but are we drawing police away from the consumption of alcohol point to where you'd be nervous about what's happening over there?
We could very well, where we would have to move things from one side to the other.
Okay. Thank you.
Alderwoman Ruby?
Thank you. Has the chamber considered other locations? Are there any other possibilities that would accommodate everything?
I think that was in your packet as well. We've had some discussions about alternative locations since the 2019 event.
Right.
Those, we haven't been able to come to a consensus in terms of finding an adequate location for them and us to agree that this is a suitable site that allows for everything that's going on for that very dynamic festival. It's become very popular and very well attended. We just haven't been able to find another spot to move it.
Okay, so we is the police department and the chamber?
We as the city, not just the police department, but multiple departments within the city.
Electrical, all of the needs, various needs that it takes.
Kathleen is really the face and does an enormous amount of work for this, but it gets routed amongst 20 some odd different people within the city to ensure each little piece gets addressed in terms of what water's looking for, what electric is looking for, what police are looking for. So we're trying to ensure everyone looks over it and ensures that it's a safe event.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Bruno?
Guess this would be for the chamber. So right now it's written in as 6 p.m. Are you looking for 7 p.m.? Are you looking for 10 p.m.?
10. They were looking at 10 p.m. and we do hire for the Festival of Vine Spa. We hire and pay people to be security and look after the wine. I mean, we've had police walk through there, but we take it upon ourselves to hire people to make sure nobody's walking out of the fence with liquor. I mean, that's something we've learned to do over the last years, to be very careful of how that liquor is controlled, and whether we need some additional personnel that maybe we could hire to watch if it's a matter of the flow of the people that are on the other side of the street, if they're worried about kids or something else. I would think we'd be willing to hire some additional person if it takes another 2 people to give us whatever security is needed. But I always like to think if we can be open about it, are there some ways we could make it happen rather than, well, we just can't do it because this is an issue. And I like to take the issues, if I know exactly what they are, and figure out how you solve them and then make it go forward, because I think it's good for the Carnival's a member of the chamber. They've been out of business for a long time too, so it's helping them. They've just done 2 big city festivals, and they brought in considerable money from, because people want to go to carnivals right now with their kids, because it's just sort of a release, sort of like getting back to school. So I think it could be very successful. We don't want to do anything that's going to hinder. I mean, the police give us tremendous service, and they're strapped to the ultimate end too, in terms of just numbers and everything they have to do these days too. So we aren't looking about throwing all the responsibility to them, but we're more than happy to try and figure if there's some solution to make it happen. And it may cost us a little bit to do it, but still it would make the whole event much better, I think, for the city. I think it would be great for the city. I think it'd be great for the city that would come back alive, and yeah, there are people over there eating, but this is for kids. That really isn't for kids. The fine food and the drinking over there is not a place you're going to take the kids. Families will bring their kids to the carnival. So that's just sort of the way how we're looking at it.
Can I say something real quick?
Alderman Bruno still has the floor.
I'll let,
and then Alderman Maladra.
We always have the option when we talk to the carnival people. They said the 6 o'clock closing, they would not be able to make enough money to even warrant it. But they were willing to go to 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock instead of 10 o'clock. So we can kind of play with that time a little bit, but the 6 o'clock just won't work at this moment.
I'm uncomfortable revising the agreement sitting here, but I am open to a discussion at our next meeting or whenever to see if we can't either stay with this or revise something or come to some accommodation. Thanks.
Alderman Maladra, sir.
Right, so along those lines, I don't think it's up to us to figure out if we can come up with that accommodation. I think that we're in a position that if staff between now and next week, say, is able to work with the chamber and say, we have a solution. Scott, you want to look for solutions. I think looking is great, but if your solution is not something we feel we can support, then it's not a solution after all. So in the intervening week, I don't want us to be telling him what he can do and what he can't do. But if they can work with the chamber and come up with the solution that has yet to present itself, then I feel we might be open to some sort of change that you would recommend.
The festival's 2.5 weeks away, is what we have, so it's coming up real quickly.
So you have 2 weeks, 3.5 days, or whatever.
Alderman Maladra, anything else, sir?
Yeah, I'm done ranting.
Okay, no, it's all good. Alderman Swanson, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. It seems like we're creating a second piece of a very successful festival, and maybe that's the problem we're having, and maybe the solution would be to have a separate carnival at a different time. Would that be an option and not link the Festival of the Vine to the carnival?
That's always an option. It's a great idea. The problem with that is it doesn't bring enough people down to warrant the carnival coming in again, because it's not on a main street, so that it has to actually have a festival to succeed.
Okay, I guess I was looking at it, somebody stated earlier that they didn't think there was going to be a lot of overlap between the two sides. So I was looking at them as two distinct events. So I guess I'm uncomfortable if our police department is uncomfortable policing it to allow that, but I would look at it as perhaps two separate events. We lose that problem of trying to staff two different sides simultaneously. So that's where I fall on the issue. Thank you.
Alderman Mayor.
My third grader would be very, very unhappy if I didn't say that I'd really like the carnival to come as well. But I think it's for staff to see if there's any way for that to happen. 8 o'clock would seem fine. The kids are gone home probably by then. So that would be my take on it.
Anyone else who's not yet spoken before I recognize Alderman Kosarog for a second time? And again, the floor is open. It's just general Q&A. Alderman Kosarog?
Do we have a meeting next week?
We do not have a meeting next week, ladies and gentlemen. We have one on August 30th.
Would it be possible to just to kind of go along the lines of what Alderman Maladra said, is to modify our motion to let Stephanie and the police and them work it out on their own. If they can find something, let them execute it. That's great with us. If the carnival's not there, I'm in agreement with what almost everybody else said, that we cannot overrule the safety concerns of our police and at this time. So
There would be
I don't
no
know.
motion required to do so. It is certainly encouraged, of course, to have the parties collaborate additionally. It would be my opinion, and if anyone disagrees, please chime in, that for the practical purpose of tonight's vote, the vote, based on your comments, was consistent with the conditions as outlined in the packet. Should those conditions change based on additional collaboration and consultation between the chamber and the city, and perhaps a resolution be achieved, that can be then revisited, and we can simply bring the matter up again, because it would be a different topic, generally speaking, since it would be amended. Is that fair, Mr. City Attorney?
That's fine, absolutely.
And so it would be an August 30 deadline, is what it would be, the next time we gather.
No, that probably would be, because the carnival has to know in terms of, you know, where they are. The carnival would need to know before, and so if it's gonna be another 2 weeks before we could really come to, unless we could come to a solution and tell them that, yeah, you can do this and start making arrangements, that becomes almost very difficult to do. And we've got 4 major festivals with the 5 women in the office. We're not looking for another whole event to, because it takes literally, you know, months ahead to prepare for these kinds of things. This we're doing at, again, we're at a stepped up pace this year just because of COVID. I mean, we could have started this, you know, 6 months ago and come here and look for things, but we're sort of in a much shorter mode of planning these things and trying to get them off the ground. And with the carnival, we felt very good because they've done this for over 40 years for us, so they know the spot here, they know how to run it, they come in and take care of it very efficiently. So that's the reason we went that way. We didn't really think that the county was going to let us even do it there, so we were surprised at that, and that pushed it ahead. So that's just where it is, and I understand where you're coming from. I mean, we would certainly be willing to look for solutions in terms of hiring some kind of officers from another town that are available that we would pay to come on duty and do it just to make it happen, and I think it would be great for the city, but that's your decision.
Alderman Mayor?
Am I right to think that moving the Festival of Vine portion, the food and drink portion, over by the courthouse would alleviate a lot of the problems of the crossing, which I've been in myself, and it's quite nerve-wracking.
That's a great idea, but we can't have alcohol on the county courthouse area.
But there was the craft brew tent at Swedish Days that was very large on the one side, and it was on the other side a year before, so it would seem like there is space.
Yes, there is, and that was one of our ideas that we did in 2019, that we were going to do in 2020. We did have quite a few discussions on moving the festival, but since we didn't have enough time to move the festival this year, it had to go back in the same spot.
Part of the issue has to do with electric infrastructure and what we can actually power, and that's why we haven't sat down to see how much voltage or ampage or whatever it is.
And we are starting
And so we
the
have
day
committed
after.
that that's what we are going to do
Yeah.
before next year, but those are discussions we've looked at. It's all about how we can service the event.
Yeah, we just can't put alcohol on county property.
Alderwoman Ruby? Oh, excuse me, Alderman Mayor, the floor is still yours. Alderwoman Ruby?
Thank you. Just in the interest of everyone's time, before we informally direct staff to continue this conversation, I'm just curious for the key players here tonight to share with us if you feel like you've already exhausted all these conversations. I kind of assume that you already have before tonight, but maybe not. I don't want to assume anything incorrectly.
I feel like we have, unfortunately. Believe me, it is no small feat for us to come before you to have this conversation. We've tried to have extensive talks to see if we can come to a kind of common understanding where we can balance the needs of safety with bringing all the people that want to come and showcase Geneva for the wonderful place that it is. And you vote on many of those applications more often than not without any issue whatsoever. So this is a very rare occasion for us to stand before you and use that as our point of contention. So I think we are at an impasse, which is why we are here right now. So I don't know that giving it more time for discussion will get us to a final disposition.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm ready to move on and hope for a better plan next year. Hope things work out better next year. And also, we're still dealing with COVID and crowds in general. Not a big fan of. So that's my personal opinion. Thank you.
I just as a comment, though, I've always been straightforward with this group. I don't think we've had discussions the way I have discussions on trying to solve problems. I think the chamber's more told, this is the way it is, take it or leave it, and we haven't had what I would call personally, the kinds of to try and figure out other solutions and be open to other ways of doing things. So I respect his point of view and where he's coming from. I don't think the board or I feel that kind of, and that's why I stood up here to make sure that this issue was clear and we had clarity on it. Because a lot of things this started out, the first problem was there are going to be little kids running across the street. And so there were other issues that we've dealt with all along. We've tried to solve those and have answers for them. So that's just the way it is. And we'll take whatever you say, obviously, and do it.
Thank you. I appreciate you sharing. Thank you.
Alderman Maladra, sir?
Yeah, so I appreciate what Scott said, but even if that is the case, I don't think that you're going to get tonight. We aren't able to dive into all of the issues that you guys have been addressing for the past several months and come up with some magic alternative that's going to solve this. And then I think we have to add to that the fact that we're talking about a festival that's outgrown its location, period, in general, without a new carnival. So to add a new attraction to a festival that's already kind of, more than 10 pounds in a 10-pound bag is just bagging additional complexity. It's adding complexity to the problem. So I agree with Alderman Ruby. I think we move on for this year, but we spend significant time between now and next year's festival seeing how we can craft something that meets your needs, but also meets the needs, for the whole community, and finding a location that can make this event bigger and better than it is. Sorry, that was rant number 2.
Public comment is still the topic du jour. Anyone else? Public comment? New business from the council? Motion to adjourn would be in order. Alderman Marks. Oh, excuse me.
Sorry, I don't think you saw my hand. I do have a comment.
Oh, forgive me. Yes, of course. Yes.
Shouldn't take that long, but. Hi, I'm Linda Schweighofer, and I'm representing the Good Templar Park tonight. I came because I wanted to hear a little bit about the water issues, and we have a little bit of a water issue, and it's a little different than what was talked about today. So I was wondering if perhaps we could have some conversation or just awareness of what's going on. We have, our issue has to do with the retention pond water, the runoff water that runs out of the retention pond into our park along the creek. And over the years, it's caused a huge ravine, and we've lost trees because of the erosion and all the roots being eroded away. We recently had a hillside that collapsed. And so the water that's running through the park, it's near, it's east side, it's off of East Side Drive near Locust, in between Locust, across from Geneva. I'm just we've had somebody come in and look at it, and I was wondering if that is part of a solution, a plan that you've looked at, or if you've, that retention pond, or how that is going to impact the water that we currently are having and have had in the park.
Mr. Babica, yes, sir. Thank you. And apologies for not seeing your hands. No, it's good.
Associate Engineer Brian Davids and our engineering intern spent the day walking through Good Templar Park at the request of invited Good Templar Park last week. They did note several areas of erosion within Good Templar Park, and have been what we're basically going to be doing is asking WBK to take this up as part of the citywide drainage basin study, to spend some time and effort looking at it, to see if there is more flow than what should be going through there, or what the issues are, as well as if there's been any changes internally to that facility that could also be contributing to the factor.
Very good.
And this is a stormwater issue, not an effluent issue, so it's completely separate.
Correct, yeah, just to clarify. Alderwoman Ruby.
Is Good Templar within city limits? I mean, I think we still have some responsibility here. I'm just curious.
It's within city limits, and
If you're asking whether it's annexed to the city,
Yes.
where's Craig Hansen when we need him for you know? It's like,
Surrounded on all sides.
was he?
Right.
Oh, shucks.
Surrounded on all sides.
It's surrounded on all
Yeah,
sides.
no,
so
I think ethically we have some
But
obligations, but I was just curious about that technicality. Thank you.
it's not an ethical question so much as a land drainage issue, which is well established through both state and county ordinances and laws.
We've had great conversations with not only Craig, but I believe it's Steve and others who I've spoken to over the last week, and they are aware of this meeting, of course. And I also assured them that the PowerPoint presentation made by our friends at Deutscher will be up and running tomorrow. So, absolutely.
Thank you.
So that Viking ship comes in handy when there's extra storm. That wasn't even funny, Amy. What are you saying over there? Anyone else? Alderman Marks, does your motion to adjourn still stand? Yes. How about a roll call to see if we want to adjourn this meeting, Mr. Clerk? All in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, please say nay. We'll take a 2-minute break and be back in about 20 minutes. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to call to order tonight's Committee of the Whole meeting. Let the record show that 8 of the aldermen are present. The 2 absent are Alderman Caven and Alderwoman Burghardt. Item 2 is to approve Committee of the Whole minutes from August the 2nd, 2021. Is there a motion? Motion by Alderman Swanson, seconded by Alderman Kosarog. Any questions or comments regarding the minutes that have been presented? If not, a motion to approve, indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
The chair says the ayes have it. How's that? Perfect. Items of business, folks. 3A, consider draft resolution authorizing the execution of an engineering agreement with Baxter and Woodman Consulting Engineers for a wastewater plan digester condition assessment in an amount not to exceed $27,640. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Alderman Marks makes the motion.
Second.
Alderman Bruno makes the second. Ms. Dawkins?
Sure, the anaerobic digesters at the wastewater plant have been in operation since 2000. The digesters are in need of interior cleaning and condition assessment. The budget contains funds allocated towards hiring a consultant to perform the condition assessment of the inside of the digesters, develop a list of needed repairs, and prepare bidding documents. Staff published a request for proposals and received 5 proposals from qualified firms. After evaluation and scoring the proposals, Baxter and Woodman Consulting Engineers were the highest scorer, and staff met with Baxter and Woodman to go over the scope of services and hours needed. We still have Bob Van Gescam with us this evening if there are any additional questions.
Any questions for the superintendent? Seeing none, anticipating none, a voice vote is sufficient. All in favor of item 3A, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? The ayes have it. The motion will be advanced to, or the topic will be advanced to, the City Council meeting for additional consideration. Item 3B, consider draft ordinance authorizing the extension of municipal water service to the property located at 33 West 929 East, East Roosevelt Road without annexation. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Alderman Mayor makes the motion. Second. Alderwoman Ruby makes the second. Ms. Dawkins.
So again, the property referenced is not located within the corporate limits of the city. However, state statute provides that we may extend maintenance of water mains outside corporate limits as long as we have the majority of owners of record of the real property petition the corporate authorities for such service. The property is owned in a land trust, and the beneficiary of that trust, Alice Marine, has requested to connect to the City of Geneva's municipal water service through the attached letter that was in the packet, submitted by her attorney, Kathleen Duncan. We also wanted to make sure to note that Ms. Duncan is representing Ms. Marine on behalf of Waste Management of Illinois, Inc. And I guess if you have any other questions, I don't see the Marines here, so I'm here to answer any questions.
Questions or comments for Ms. Dawkins? Alderman Bruno, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I might have missed something, but historically, haven't these types of annexations or extensions of the water required a higher rate, like a 50% higher water rate?
So that was the case until that was deemed illegal.
Oh.
And so we refunded all of those individuals who had been paying that higher rate, and now they all pay the same.
Okay, thank you.
Are you one of those? No. Anyone else? Questions for the city administrator? If not, all those in favor of item 3B, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? This matter has been approved with 8 affirmative votes and will be advanced to the City Council for additional consideration. Item 3C, consider draft resolution authorizing acceptance of the 2021 Employee Benefits Plan renewal effective November 1, 2021.
So moved.
Motion by Alderman Kilberg. Seconded by Alderman Mayor. Ms. Dawkins.
So I'm going to keep this short because the summary in the packet was about 2 pages long. But essentially, all of our benefit coverages renew on November 1st. So tonight we're looking at renewing the medical and the dental and standard insurance. As you saw, the medical plan originally was an overall rate increase of 18.9%. That's been brought down to 7.69%. We're doing that by consolidating 2 of the plans into one. The dental plans would renew with no increases in the funding levels or premiums, and then the life insurance policy had a 2-year rate guarantee. And then we also offer a vision discount program, and that's paid fully by the employee. I'm cutting to the chase because we have 3 other individuals who can provide all the information you would like to know. We do have Boomer Whipple with us from Lundstrom Insurance. We have our HR coordinator, Mira Johnson, and we have Assistant City Administrator, Ben McCready.
The floor is open for questions from the dais. Anyone? Alderman Swanson, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. I guess this question is for the insurance people, and that has to do with the initial budget renewal, or the premium was at 18.9% increase.
Correct.
And then our executive summary indicates that we were able to consolidate certain plans, and because of that, they lowered the amount.
That was one of the final steps.
Okay.
Just to be good evening. Good to see everybody again.
Welcome back. Good to see you, Boomer.
Good to see you guys. Initially, obviously, it's a pretty ugly renewal.
Yes, absolutely.
Especially with the history that the city has had over the last 10 years, really. Obviously, a bizarre year with COVID. The claims were up, both in the PPO and the HMO, significantly. 155% loss ratio in the PPO. Some large claims, they weren't, while COVID impacted everybody, some of these significant large claims weren't necessarily COVID related. So we did go to market to get alternate carrier quotes. To the main players, to all the players. 3 of the players declined to quote because they were uncompetitive. The one carrier that did quote was United Healthcare,
And if anybody knows anything about employee benefits, United Healthcare wakes up every day trying to take business away from Blue Cross Blue Shield. Their best foot forward was 15.7% higher than the current. So we know that your current pricing is extremely competitive. When we go to market and get these alternate carrier quotes, we actually know that the renewal pricing is somewhat competitive. But we don't, anytime we get an increase from any carrier, we go back and ask for rate relief. And one of the reasons we were able to obtain rate relief initially is because your longevity with Blue Cross Blue Shield. And while a lot of employers have lost enrollment over the last year, you stayed pretty steady. And we had a couple of issues with what they were doing with the stop loss fee. So we were able to get rate relief initially. Blue Cross Blue Shield did know that there was a competitive quote. They didn't necessarily know how competitive, but they did know that an alternate carrier did quote on it. So that also helped sharpen the pencil. Once we got down to that, we were able to get another credit called a wellness credit based on the fact that the city each year and every year with staff, we do employee meetings for the employees to walk through not only the benefit plans, but also the wellness initiatives within Blue Cross Blue Shield. And then the final piece that you talked about was something that we've talked about for a while, which is you've had two HMO plans. You've had something called HMO Illinois, which has been the larger network, and we've had something called Blue Advantage HMO, which has been a smaller network. And it's important to know that one of the reasons that historically your increases have been below trend, when most employers are seeing 4 to 6%, you guys have seen about 2.5%. One of the reasons that we've seen that is because of your participation in the HMO, because of the managed care component, because of the fact that these individuals, 49% of your enrollees are in one of those two HMOs. When employees embrace the HMO concept and you have that gatekeeper function and you have the smaller network and you have the capitation agreements that the doctors have with the insurance company, that lowers the cost trend. 60% of your HMO enrollees are in the Blue Advantage HMO, which has historically been the smaller network, if you will. And when I talk about network, I'm talking about doctors and hospitals that agree to be in one of those two networks. We put the Blue Advantage Entrepreneur or the Blue Advantage HMO plan in, I think, about 13 years ago as kind of a lower cost, smaller network option compared to HMO Illinois, which was the larger network. The premium differential between the two is about 7%. What we've seen over the last decade, because this is something that we've been strategically talking about, is the Blue Advantage HMO network is growing in terms of the doctors and hospitals. We've done disruption reports over the last couple of years. Last year, I think it really only impacted one family, and what I mean by that is there was one family that was in the HMO Illinois network whose medical group that they were going to see would not have been in the Blue Advantage network. The disruption report this year came back and there was no disruption, meaning all of the HMO Illinois members were seeing a medical group that was also in the Blue Advantage HMO network. So staff and we looked at a lot of different options, but we figured this was the year, if you will, to use that arrow in your quiver to move everybody over that is currently in the HMO Illinois into the Blue Advantage HMO. That doesn't mean there couldn't be some disruption, because we're obviously looking at it at a point in time, but we think there'd be minimal disruption to those HMO Illinois members moving into the Blue Advantage HMO network. In a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry if that was long-winded. But
No, that's good to know. You mentioned something, though, an arrow in the quiver. My question is related to, do we have any arrows left in the quiver for next year?
Good question.
What if we end up at 20% next year and we're out of arrows?
Good question. There are still plenty of arrows in the quiver. We felt as though with staff, we felt that this was a minimal type move where we didn't have to change any of the benefits. The last time we actually changed benefits in one of the benefit plans was in 2015, when we had an increase like this, right around 11% initially, down to 8.9%, and we increased the specialist copays. While we looked at some of those other arrows, if you will, this year, the return on investment didn't make sense. But we do have arrows in the quiver in terms of bumping up deductibles, bumping up out-of-pocket maximums, bumping up office visit copays that we can use, and also taking a look at the prescription drug card program. So there are other arrows in the quiver that we can utilize next year. Knock on wood, we don't need to, but if we need to, they're there.
Okay, and I guess the point of my conversation here is I think if this continues and the trend line is looking pretty ugly, we have a 2.56 simple average for the last 5 years. However, if you go back the last 3, it was 1.1, 4.6, 7.7. At that rate, we're going to be at 10, 11% next year. And that's turning into real money for us. And that 19% would have been a $400,000 nut for us to to cover. So I think we need to be aware that we're going to be having to look for arrows in the quiver going forward. So,
Agreed.
thank you.
Yep.
Anyone else? Sensing no other questions, we do have a motion on the floor. We do have a second. Stephanie, please take the roll.
Swanson,
Aye.
Bruno,
Aye.
Ruby,
Aye.
Kilberg,
Aye.
Kasserag,
Aye.
Maladra,
Aye.
Marks,
Aye.
Mayor.
Aye.
With a vote of 8 in the affirmative, 0 negative votes, and 2 absent, this matter has been adopted and advanced to the City Council for additional consideration. Ladies and gentlemen, this might shock you, but we are at public comment at new business. Anyone online? Mr. McCready?
No one joining us this evening.
Well, it's so dramatic. Thank you very much. It's like Guy Smiley's Assistant City Administrator. New business by any member of the committee? A motion to adjourn would be in order. Alderman Kasserag makes that motion. All in favor of accepting that motion, please indicate by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much.